Welcome to this DaVinci Resolve Fusion node breakdown. Today's node is the Primatte node. And before you jump into Fusion, just so you know, the Primatte node is only available in the standalone version of Fusion Studio. And I'm covering this because, one, we're getting towards the tail end of our nodes. We've been doing this for almost a year or over a year, and we're getting to the tail end, and there are a few nodes that are studio only. Not studio only, are Fusion Studio only, the standalone version. And if you don't have Fusion Studio standalone, you can jump over to Blackmagic and download it. You can use it for free, and if you have a key for DaVinci Resolve Studio, the same key will activate your Fusion Studio for the studio version of the standalone. But the Primatte keyer is only available in this standalone version and not in the DaVinci Resolve version. So let's go ahead and add a Primatte keyer. So Primatte. And what the Primatte is it's a keyer. And I'm sure we've all used the Primatte in different programs because Primatte isn't Fusion or DaVinci specific. It's actually an OFX that you can use in many other programs. But how the Primatte keyer works is it works on different zones, and it's built to clean those different zones. And just for a visual, this is what I'm talking about with zones. And I just pulled this from foundry.com when it's going over the Nuke, because like I said, Primatte keyer is one of the keyers we use within Nuke. So they had a good little breakdown of the 4 zones. So zone 1 is just complete background image. So when it's covering zone 1, it's just looking for that background image. And it's not applying any spill suppression. Once it starts working on zone 2, it's starting to work on the foreground image with spill suppression, and your key hits 1 to 99% in value, meaning it's starting to add that transparency in that background. And once we're in zone 3, it's working on the foreground only with spill suppression, and your key is sitting at 100% value, meaning if you got a green screen, all your green is keyed out in the background. And then once it starts working on zone 4, this is complete foreground image. So I know it's confusing, but it's kind of good to know that this works on 4 zones when we're doing the Primatte keyer, because this is how our little menu system is broken down. So jumping over to our inspector, the first thing we have up here are our view modes. And I'm going to go ahead and grab a quick little key so we can look at our different view modes. So if we have it set to black, it's just going to display our little foreground image with the background either black or transparent. Composite is going to be the final keyed image with spill suppression. So if we had any spill suppression, which we don't yet, it would show that. Defocus foreground just displays the output of the Primatte key. Process foreground just displays the alpha of the key before it's being combined with our solid and our garbage mats. Hybrid matte is going to display the matte that's generated when we're doing hybrid rendering down here. Lighting foreground is just going to display the foreground subject over an optimized artificial backing screen. And then lighting background is going to display the optimized artificial backing screen that the adjusted lighting mode has changed. So if we select this adjusted lighting, it's going to show in this. So these are different view modes we're going to use while we're changing different settings here. Additionally, one of my favorite view modes is just going up here to change it from alpha back to RGB. Next, we have all of our different menu systems within our Primatte key, but we're going to stay on the Primatte right now. Here we have lock color picking. That way, if we need to lock this so we don't accidentally reselect a key, we can just select that, and now we can't select anything. And I'm going to reset this because we have this auto compute button, and auto compute is going to work pretty well for most situations. And if I select auto compute, it's going to run through all 4 zones and do everything from cleaning our background to adding spill suppression. So let's go ahead and select auto compute, and that's our result. And if you notice, we've got a little purplish hue going on because it applied spill suppression, and Primatte has always been fairly aggressive when it comes to spill suppression. And pretty much if we look at our color node here, if we look at our greens, the opposite of our greens are our purples and our reds over here. So that's why we're always going to get this purplish hue with a green screen, because it's basically pulling those greens out and going this way. If we're using a blue screen, or spill suppression would be adding a little more oranges and reds. So let's get rid of that, and let's reset, because we're going to go through these steps individually. So first, you would want to select your background color. So if I click this button and I select my background color, it just selected my background color. So it's only operating on that single zone. Next up, I can clean my background noise, meaning if I have any additional noise in my background, and this one was fairly good. I'm trying to see if there's anything heavy. I can barely see. You might not be able to see it in YouTube compression, but there's a tiny bit over here. But if you have all this noise going on in your key, if you select background noise and just click over that noise, it's going to remove them or add it to your key. Same with clean foreground noise. If we look at our image, we really don't have any noise going on. But if we had breaks in our matte here and we were seeing black within our little area here, we could select clean foreground noise, select it, and it's going to clean it up. But I really don't see any in this image. Our spill sponge is going to clean some of that spill on there. And again, this is going to be fairly aggressive. So you really want to make sure you're only selecting areas where you actually have spill. So if I go in here and we have this slight green going on over here, if I just select this area right here, you can see it just added some spill suppression. As opposed to if I was to try to select like a large color group, like if I just selected all this, you can see it's going to be extremely aggressive. Now for our matte sponge, if we look at our matte and we're getting some slightly transparent areas in here, which we often do when we're trying to key stuff out, where it keyed some of your green spill out of our like people's faces or on their clothing, the matte sponge is what you would select and click over those somewhat transparent areas, and it would fill those in. For our restore detail, if I zoom in here, our restore detail is going to allow us to scrub over background regions in the viewer, and it's going to take some of these completely transparent areas and turn them back into kind of translucent areas. So if I needed to bring some of that detail back in the hair, I could scrub, and if I get on my color here, if I scrub, it's going to bring them back, but they're back pretty good. So it's really not affecting that much. And if I select this and make foreground transparent, it's going to make my foreground area slightly translucent so I can do any additional work. Under here, we have this spill plus and spill minus. If I select spill plus, this is going to return some of those spill colors back into my little foreground here. So if we did too much spill suppression, using the spill plus and clicking will add that back in. Whereas spill minus will allow me to get in here and select a little more spill areas, and it's just going to slightly remove some of that spill. And matte plus and matte minus operates the same way, but on our little matte level here. So if I have to add stuff back in, I can just select and slowly add some of the stuff back in. Whereas matte minus is going to slowly start removing some of this stuff. And what would work better within this area is our detail minus and detail plus, because this is going to work on the semi-transparent areas right in here. So if I select my detail minus, I can start removing some of that detail, or my detail plus, I can start adding some of it back in. Under our algorithms here, we're going to want to make sure we change this before we actually do any changes. So for example, if I made all my keys and I wanted to change my algorithm to RT plus, you notice it's doing some funky stuff. So if I reset our node, Primatte mode is going to deliver the best results for both solid color and complementary color spill suppression methods. And it's got the most advanced algorithm, whereas RT is going to be your simplest and fastest one. And it's only going to operate on a single surface to separate our 3D color space from the key. And you notice our spill suppression isn't that great. And then RT plus is somewhere in between Primatte and RT. And it's going to give you fairly decent results depending on your footage. So let's reset, go back to Primatte and auto compute. For our hybrid rendering, if we select this is going to allow us to make adjustments to our matte. So if I go up to our view mode and select this hybrid matte, and I change our hybrid blur, you can see it's going to blur our matte. And our erode is going to erode or contract our matte. Now, if we if I reset this and we look at our green screen is pretty evenly lit. So because I believe they probably replaced the original with just all green color. But if we had a typical green screen that was unevenly lit, this is what our adjust lighting is for. So if I auto compute and select this adjust lighting, it's going to disappear because our green screen was evenly lit. If it wasn't, however, we would be able to adjust this lighting threshold to change how evenly lit our lighting was. So if we looked at our lighting foreground or our lighting background and we make these adjustments, we'll be able to see slight changes in our lighting. You can see that just popped up. So increasing our threshold will make less changes, while decreasing our threshold will more evenly light our little screen in the background there. So let's reset, auto compute, go back to composite, and shut off our adjust lighting. Because if we have this turned on and we don't really have any lighting to adjust, it's going to consider that foreground image as something it needs to adjust, and it's pretty much just going to take it out. And then our crop right here will just allow us to crop our image, kind of make a little fake garbage matte on our little footage there. And down here for our reset, we'll completely reset the entire node. Our soft reset will just go back one, like kind of an undo button. But in my experience, a lot of times it undoes more than just one little step. Under our tuning tab, this is where we can fine tune some of our spill suppression. So we can make adjustments to it. And initially we're really not going to see anything because our color is set to black. But if we were to select a color for our spill suppression, you notice our little selected color changes. And then we can change our spill amount. We can change the transparency of that spill. We can change the detail amount of that spill. And if you notice, the soft reset just did a lot more than undo our last selection. And if I hit this reset and I go back to our tuning, you notice it didn't reset anything. Our color is still there. So I'm going to delete this node and add another one that I know is nice and clean. So let's auto compute. So that's the tuning stage. Under the replace tab, this is allowing us to change the mode that we're replacing our spill information. Right now it's on complement, which is just going to use color space to complement. If I select image, it's going to use a defocused image of the background. So if I bring, say, our original footage into this background input right here, and to be able to see this, I'm going to have to change this to black instead of our composite because our background has that green screen on it. But if I change this to image, and if we look at what's going on here, I can image defocus, and it's using that background, defocused background, to affect some of our spill suppression going on around here. So if you had a clean image instead of our green screen image, this would operate a lot better because our green's still in it. But you can use an image input to the background to affect our replace mode for our spill suppression. We can also use color if we wanted to. So right here, we can just change our color, and let me disconnect this. So if we change our color up, you can see that spill is changing with our color. Let's go back, reset. Let's refit and auto compute. Under our degrain, this is where we can degrain our footage or degrain our background there. And a lot of times when we do green screen, you notice we have tons of little noise going on the side of our green screen. This is a tab we would use to minimize that. So right now it's just set to none under grain size. We can select small, medium, and large. And then we can change our grain tolerance to change that grain. And you notice it's affecting our foreground image. And this is where you would want to come in and change your size so you're not affecting that image. But if we zoom in here, you can see our grain tolerance is helping out with some of that little noise that's happening around our edges there. So we could drop that a little bit and we're good. And our matte tab just allows us to finesse our matte a little better. And for our blur filter nodes, we have our typical box, Bartlett, multi-box, Gaussian, and fast Gaussian. And then we have our blur amount to blur that out. So if I zoom in here, we can see what's happening. As I blur, you notice it's blurring out and in. And once we start adding this blur, it's going to start adding that dark halo around there. To help with that, we have this blur inward only button. So if we select that, our outward blur is going to be minimized. It's still going to be there, but it's going to be minimized. So we can change our blur level up. Additionally, we can contract and expand. And we can change that gamma. Additionally, we can change our threshold. So we can minimize our threshold to bring some of that white gunk in. And under our restore fringe, this is exactly what it does, is it restores some of our fringe. So we can add that to bring some of that fringe back in. If we look at our hair over here, restoring fringe is going to start bringing some of that back in. And invert matte is going to do exactly that. It's going to invert our matte. For our solid and garbage mats, these only operate if we actually have inputs coming in. So let's go over these inputs real quick. This background is exactly that. It's a background. So you could bring in whatever you want. If I wanted to bring in this background, and I'm probably going to need a resize. So resize 3840 by 2160. There we go. So I can input this into our background. And if I go here and go back to our composite, you can see we have got our little black background. And I can change our color up to a different color. Okay. And that's what the background input is for. Right here we have our effects mask input. So anywhere we have this, the effects mask input, that's the only place it's going to take place. Here we have a garbage mask input, so we can bring that rectangle back in, input it into our garbage mask. And when we do, this is where the invert comes into play. So if I go back to Primatte, under our garbage mat, if I invert it, it's going to invert that rectangle. Or optionally, if I just leave that, go to our rectangle and invert our rectangle, it's the same thing. And now we can resize our little garbage mat here. And there we go, we've got a garbage mat. Our white input is for a solid mat. So if I wanted to bring in a polygon, input it, I could create a rough little mat around our subject there. So if I go to our Primatte and we look, we've got our solid mat and our garbage mat, but just know when we have both of these marked in, let's go ahead and invert our solid mat. You can see it did some odd things. So just watch your inverting when you have both of these plugged in. So that's pretty much your settings on your Primatte Curer, but you notice this is still kind of odd. So technically what I really like doing, whether I'm using the Delta Cure or the Primatte Cure, and let's go ahead and let's get a fresh Primatte. So shift space, Primatte Cure. Let's go here. I'm going to hit auto compute. And again, I'm not digging that spill suppression. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll add a shift space hue curves node. I'm going to add it. I'm going to bring in our footage. And on this footage, I'm going to suppress our green and just bring our green level down to 0 to 0. And this should be sitting at about 2. What I'm doing is just getting rid of some of that green that's in her little area right there, but not too much of it. And then I could add a channel booleans node. So channel booleans, and I'm going to bring our Primatte Curer to the background, our hue curves into the foreground, and our channel node. I'm just going to copy all my coloring from my foreground, but I'm going to use my alpha from my background. So now we've got that keyed, but you notice it does weird things to our alpha, so we need to multiply that out. So I can hit shift space, add an alpha multiply. Now we've got our key. And our spill suppression is a little better than our straight spill suppression on our Primatte carrier. You notice that's purplish, and this is a little close to our color. And of course, we can always add a color corrector after this to correct it up even more. So that is the Primatte. I will see you in the next node breakdown.